All right, I'm gonna try and poke you with, I guess, soon to be or current events, depending on where you work, and that's firefighting during civil unrest. And since you've had, direct knowledge with working with guys that worked through the riots, been in some tenuous situations yourself, what are some experience-based takeaways when it comes to working in a really bad situation where the city itself is erupting in violence, and yet we're sworn to protect the city and keep the conflagrations from burning the town down? What can we get out of you for that? Where do you start?
Well, you start with planning, and I think with the guys who experienced the riots, especially the heavy-duty riots of the '60s, they just threw things together. Here a neighborhood was going down with multiple buildings on fire, gunfire, mob mentality, looting, all that stuff happening, okay? And they learned that if you send a fire truck in there, that fire truck might get damaged, the guys might get beat up or worse, and they've got no protection other than themselves. And when that happens, if they lose that protection, well, then so forth. So I think what the old bosses did at that time, I know they did it here at home and other cities, they put companies in groups. And like you and I were talking earlier, LA City, from their experience with the riots out there, they were known for the task forces. So they put a bunch of engines and trucks together under a single command and sent them in, to operate that way. And I think a lot of other departments saw that and followed suit because it just made sense. And it kind of falls back on there's safety in numbers. Again, like we said, if an engine goes in by itself and nobody else is around to help them and they hit the jackpot or the mob turns on them and so forth, you've got nothing to protect yourself. So to hear the other guys talk from their experiences, I was mentioning a thing about the one gunshot in the Cleveland NGO where it went right up around the cab, that bullet was flying like, whatever. Little things like that, little gems that you hear from the guys operating back then. Again, the thing is, if there is a large disturbance and you're called as a fire department, remember, I'm not giving policy to you, I'm just giving experience and what I was able to learn and see and have a part of in my time on the job. And that is, like I said, number one, you got to plan for it. Number two, you have to have good communication, because I'm going to tell you, communications go to hell. We talk about communications being the number one problem on most fire grounds. I mean, Vincent Dunn talked about that. He says, when you have a complex fire situation, 85% of your fire ground problems are communication related. So imagine with all this chaos, gunfire, and all these actions going on, how hard it is to communicate. And that's another thing why you group your fire companies together.
Because face-to-face communication and a basic plan right off the bat.
That's it. Right.
Command and control has got to be way tighter than any normal scenario.
You brought up an interesting point also while we were talking a minute ago, and that is, if the mob is going to be looting, they're going to be doing it in commercial buildings. Commercial buildings are bigger than houses, so when you have several engines and maybe a couple of trucks coming in as a group, a task force or whatever, well, now you can develop greater pumping capacity because you're probably going to need it. Multiple hose lines are going to be available. Heavy streams are going to be available, especially if a big commercial building gets going really good after that's been looted. And so, stuff like that, is there for you. Kind of interesting, because one of the things that I remember when I was on the job, the guys would fold a piece of hose in half and drain it that way after a fire. And we're talking the 70s, 80s, 90s into the 2000s, And so when I asked older guys, I said, why are they doing that? They said, because during the riots, you wanted to have everybody close by. And that's the whole thing about the team operation. And again, this is something that Firefighting is all about teamwork. Whether you're fighting a fire under normal conditions, normal civil conditions, or whether you have a situation that's total chaos out in the streets, it's a teamwork operation. So instead of a guy laying out 50 feet of hose and being that far away from the engine and all this rioting going on around him, no, they'd fold it in half. At least you get them 25 feet closer to the team and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, you could do it. I mean, that's your typical length of the truck. Right?
Well,
you know, fold the length in half and drain it, shoulder load it, put it on the truck.
Now I got to tell you, you know, that was something, one of those things that was developed by experience in the riots. Well, again, this is, you know, one of the things that drawbacks to it is that you get air and water trapped in the hose. So I would always be out there after the fire. Yeah, straighten it out, and so forth. But if you would ever run into a situation like that again, that's probably what you might do.
So with that, I mean, when you come out of the fire building, typically you would see what I call a yard sale. Guys drop their helmet, they pull off their hood, they drop their air pack, you know, as they're walking through the front yard, you know. It's like, I think in that scenario, you really want to be careful and keep your safety equipment on, and then not be just so flagrant to drop your stuff, because if you need to retreat or get to the engine, you don't want anything slowing you down.
First of all, your firefighting may change also, depending on the volume of fire that you're seeing. Remember, people are going in to burn buildings down, so that means they're going to be using an accelerant in most cases. They're going to have these buildings going real good for you. And you might not be doing interior aggressive firefighting that much if that building is rolling.
You may want to just try to contain it to the building of origin.
Or the block of origin.
Or the block.
Like those guys saw back then.
Or imagine Main Street, suburban USA. I mean, somebody decides to make a big stink, and they do so in a suburb, and they take out a couple of Type 3s in a downtown Main Street.
Oh, that's it, you know, and that's that whole thing about, oh my gosh, and don't think it can't happen today. You know, look what happened up in, where was it, Minneapolis?
Sure.
With the rioting up there. I mean, blocks are burned out. You know, this is modern day. You know, everybody looks at the past and says, oh, that'll never happen again. Bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, it did.
This summer.
And so what do you do? Exactly, you know. So anyways, the other thing is about your equipment. You're bringing up a very good point, because this is happening, I know it happened, you know, well into the 80s. Somebody's going to steal a piece of equipment. One guy stole an SCBA out of a cab one night. You know, some civilian, some whack job and so forth, you know. Everyone's over there, and this guy could sneak around, get in the cab, and just see what's in there. Oh, look at this. Axes, tools, anything, you know. You might get it back, you might get a phone call in the middle of the night, you know, they're going to ransom it back to you, you know, hey, you can find this. We had radios taken out of a chief's rig one night.
Which actually, communication equipment is exactly what
right.
the bad guys want.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. We learned from that, you know. So that's where the holsters and radio bandoliers came in and so forth. And you always, you know, we had the radio pockets installed in the coach, so you had a choice, radio pocket or the holster if you wanted that. But that's what could happen, you know. And don't think because you're a fireman that everybody loves you. Yeah. Sometimes, like in the past, you represent the establishment, you know. So you don't know what's in the head of a rioter.
Yeah. So. Any other small things like tactical tips while you're on scene? Something like this?
Just everybody working under the same plan. Again, you know, that's the whole thing about not rushing in. You know, if you have a heavy-duty, full-blown riot situation, the thing about fire companies grouped together, listening to the guys from the past, once again, they had police, National Guard with them going in. Because look, we don't carry rifles, at least.
Well, not on duty.
Yeah, right. But anyways, you know, you're trying to do your job, but you can't when you're under gunfire, you know, and that's why you got to let them go in and provide the security that you need to do your job and so forth. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, no. Yeah, just because you're a fireman, you don't drink gasoline, your skin's not made of Teflon, and you don't eat gunpowder, okay? And the same thing is the reality of our job. So, you know, that's, you know,
Plan for it, watch out for each other,
yeah,
figure out how you're gonna secure your station if you're gonna be out for hours at a time,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
you know.
Different situations, and that's the interesting thing about, you know, our profession.
Like everything else, it's already been done. We just have to remember how we handled it.
Good point, Jeffrey. It's already been done. You know, so many things. You know, let's talk about firefighting for a second. Everybody wants to reinvent the wheel, put a new name to something, act like they're doing something that hasn't been done before. Guess what? I bet you it has. Somewhere, someplace. So yeah. But anyway, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Be careful out there.
Okay. Yep, for sure.